Last hour, we heard from Rand Paul and Ted Cruz here in America's Newsroom. And now there is news. Chris Christie's former campaign manager jumping ship to go work for Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush, by the way, launched the presidential cycle when he was the first to announce he was considering running for president. But all these months later, still no official decision. John Roberts live on that in Atlanta. The big question, will he or won't he? John, good morning.
Exactly, Bill, and that is the big question, because while Bush was the first to launch the exploratory committee back in December, three other candidates, including home state rival Marco Rubio, have already jumped into the race. So as you pointed out, the question with Jeb, will he or won't he? While the governor has yet to telegraph his intentions, certainly all indications point towards a run. His Right to Rise PAC and the Super PAC have been prodigiously raising money. Bush reportedly asked donors to cap their contributions to the Super PAC at $1 million. At the same time, Bush has been crisscrossing the country, building a base of support that could carry him through the primaries. And while his PAC won't give out numbers, he had paid staffers in Iowa, New Hampshire, and Florida. So why is he waiting to pull the trigger? Bush loyalists say he's well enough known that he doesn't need to take on the mantle of, quote, presidential candidate to attract support, unlike other lesser-known candidates.
They do not have the recognition necessarily, and they need to capitalize a little bit on the open space in the primaries or in the race right now. I don't think that's true of Jeb Bush. I think that he could wait, and I think, in fact, waiting is going to be proven to be a smart move on his part.
Also, waiting to declare allows him to road test his message and test out some campaign themes at private events, something he wouldn't be able to do if he were to declare as a candidate, because, of course, all of those events would suddenly become very, very public, Bill.
Yeah. So look at the calendar, John. When could he possibly declare?
There's talk about potentially announcing a run in mid-May, but perhaps later than that. Barry Wynn, who is the former chairman of the South Carolina Republican Party, told me that he is attending a meeting of supporters this weekend at Bush's Miami home to talk about all that.
I think it will be part of the decision-making process. Some of the people who have been involved in building this leadership infrastructure around the country will be involved in that meeting. I would say that you're doing very well in South Carolina. You're building a lot of good support here, and I would certainly encourage him to run.
The Associated Press has got a story out this morning saying that the Right to Rise Super PAC may take on during a campaign a lot of the campaign duties that the candidate normally would handle. Sources told me they think that's a little bit of a stretch, but that all the candidates are trying to get used to what roles the Super PACs will play with the new rules.
Got it. Thank you, John. John Roberts from Atlanta. Thank you, John. Martha.
All right. So with no official announcement yet, is there any danger to Jeb's potential campaign if he holds off for too long? Steve Hayes is a senior writer for the Weekly Standard and Fox News contributor. So what do you make of this? First of all, this news that Krillos is going over to Jeb Bush's campaign from Chris Christie's. Is that a big hit for Christie?
Yeah, I think it's a symbolic hit for Chris Christie. I mean, if you look at Joe Krillos and the relationship that he's had with Chris Christie, they've been close both in politics and personally. And for somebody like that to go join Jeb Bush's team, I think, is a hit to Chris Christie. Certainly, the timing of the news of the leak, if that's what it was, is certainly interesting. If you look back at the New Hampshire confab in this past weekend, I was up there. You talked to a lot of people, you talked to a lot of voters, and one of the things coming out of that weekend was that you had New Hampshire voters sort of giving a second look to Chris Christie. So you wonder if this wasn't a deliberate attempt to sort of step on that, any momentum coming out of New Hampshire that Chris Christie might have been building.
Yeah, I mean, in New Hampshire, Chris Christie, Jeb Bush, they would have to win New Hampshire in most equations, don't you think?
I think so. I mean, it's unlikely that either one of those two would win Iowa. And if you look at New Hampshire more broadly, I think you can make an argument that there are three people who have to win there: Chris Christie, Jeb Bush, Rand Paul. Rand Paul's already said, in effect, that he needs to win there. So I think you've got a number of people competing in New Hampshire who I think have to do quite well.
Yeah. What about this story about how long it's taking Jeb to get in? Should that be a concern for his supporters?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think it was interesting to me, listening to him several times over the weekend, to hear him remind people in the course of question and answer sessions, in the course of his prepared remarks, that he isn't yet an official candidate. He did make a point to say, I'm still giving this sort of careful consideration. He didn't commit to running, but by all accounts, behind the scenes, he's making phone calls, he's raising money, he's building a big staff, and he's doing so quickly. And he's doing all of that, I think, pointing in the direction of a run.
Yeah. All right. Stay tuned. Steve, thanks.
You bet.